Okay, I think this will be episode 4 on the Norton Restoration Project. This is the engine build section. Anyway, let's have a little look. As you can see, I got the valves out of that head. And as you can see from this magnet, those are the original cast iron valve guides in there. So, anyway, how were they? They were not terrible, but not good either. Let me just stick a couple of valves in here and show you what sort of movement I'm getting on these. I hope the camera will pick this up. Like I say, I don't know for sure. If you can see that movement, but there's probably about 10,000ths of an inch. So let me try an intake valve here. Maybe you should be able to hear that little clinking noise. It's probably about 10,000. I've seen a lot worse than this. Like years and years ago, the first time I did up the head on my older Norton, I mean, they were really bad. They're probably about 20,000 slop in those things. But anyway, these are the original valves after being cleaned up. There's a little before and after example of that. I just I put them in the old Van Dorn valve grinder over there and resurfaced the see if I can get a good focus there, resurface that valve face. So anyway, they're in nice shape. Even the valve stems are within probably less than a half a thou wear, and some of them have no wear at all. So I'm quite confident that I can reuse these valves. That's just some dirt from sitting on the bench. Let me wipe her off there for you. There, that's a little better. Anyway, yeah, these cleaned up pretty nice. So I'll at least be able to reuse the valves. I definitely need new guides though. When I put my parts order in and I get those guides in, I'll carry on with this and maybe show you how to do a valve job on a Norton head. Okay, I think I mentioned I was going to do up a little tutorial on doing a valve job on a Norton cylinder head as part of this project. So, hey, I've done it on Triumph, so why not this one? Anyway, I like to heat these up to about 400 or so degrees, maybe 450. I don't like to go any hotter than that with them, but I use a little handheld infrared thermometer that gives me a good reading when it's in the barbecue, and as soon as it hits about 400, I usually pull it out because that's usually hot enough to get the valve guides out without any trouble, you know. But before I did any of that stuff, I took all the rocker shafts and stuff out of here. You have to take these out with a little slide hammer, although I have seen people pull them out with a claw hammer before. Just screw a little bolt into the end of them, and if they're loose enough in the head, they will pull out. And to help those come out of the head a little easier, if you put that cylinder head in a bucket of hot water before you do it and let the head heat up with the aluminum heated up, I think the expansion rate is about 4-to-1 for aluminum to steel, so it's quite a lot easier to get those rocker shafts out of there. Pay attention to where the little springs are on each side of the rockers when you pull them out as well. Well, once you've got them removed, then I feel comfortable putting that in the barbecue then to heat it up. So yeah, anyways, I did a little cleanup job on the head here. Mostly just scrubbing and washing over in the Varsol tank. You're looking at about 40 minutes worth of physical labor to clean that up this good. I'm not going to go any further than this until after, because, you know, after I do the cut the seats and all that sort of thing for the valves, I will I'll have to clean it out again anyway to get all the grit from lapping and the little particles of metal from reaming out the valve guides and all that. So anyway, this is what you do when you're waiting for parts to arrive. Oh, and while I'm at it, that's what you do as well. Those exhaust pipes cleaned up pretty darn good. They're not perfect, but they're certainly good enough for me. So they'll be going back on the bike. I know they're not off an R model. They're actually an interstate set of pipes that a previous owner had put on there. But hey, they look good. I can still make it look like an R model with the pipes tipped up a little bit higher like that in the back. And they'll do just fine. Besides that, it's part of the history of the bike. And I sort of like to keep, you know, historical stuff, at least some of the background to the bike. So anyway, next thing to do, wait till those valve guides come in and then get this in barbecue heated up and knock those old valve guides out and put the new ones in. Well, the mailman finally came, and of all days, it was a Sunday. I've never ever gotten mail on Sunday in my life, but he must have so many parcels to deliver this time of year that he's trying to get ahead of things. Well, since the mail's come, that means my valve guides are here, so here I am again. This time I'm roasting the cylinder head. Right now I'll let that get nice and hot before I knock those valve guides out, and I've got a nice new tripod that I'm going to try out, so maybe you can actually see what I'm doing when I'm knocking the valve guides out of this head. Okay, that head's good and hot, and this is very time sensitive because it's cold out here in the garage and it's going to cool off quick. So I'm hoping I can drive that out with this drift without getting in the camera's way. Let's see what happens. That's one. Came out quite nicely. Two intake valve guides. Now we'll get the exhaust ones if we're lucky. Okay, that's the left exhaust. That's the right exhaust. So you can see there's a difference between the exhaust valve guides and the intake valve guides. The intake valve guides have a shoulder here that will accept a seal, where the exhaust valves don't have a seal on them. So okay, I've got the old ones out. The new ones are ready to go in. I'm going to put this back in the Barbie just to keep it hot for a while. And meanwhile, I'll get the new valve guides ready to go in, and then I'll slap them in. Okay, so that's back out of the barbecue again. I've set my valve guides in some snow to keep them as cool as I can. Again, make sure you put the intake valve guides where the intake valve guides go and not the other way around, or you'll be inventing new swear words while you take them out again. Okay, that's one. That's another intake valve guide, so put that on the drift. Set that in place. There we go. That's intake valve guides in place. Now, as quick as we can, let's get the two exhaust valve guides ready. Try not to drop them on the floor and get them all dirty. All right. You can tell when you hit the bottom, it kind of makes a ring. All right, that's one right here. Okay. Yeah, there we go. That one's down, isn't it? I think it is. Yeah, that's down. Okay, so that's the new valve guides in place. Now I'm probably going to have to cut the seats to match up with the new guides, and of course the new guides will need to be reamed out. But anyway, oh here, I might as well show you this. This is an old thing I made up a long time ago. Just a block of wood with 3 holes in it. The object of those 3 holes is to take those 3 studs. That way I don't have to take the studs out. Sometimes I like to take them out and lap the cylinder head, but in this case I don't need to. And since it's hot, I'm just going to keep it up off the bench like that for now. And like I said, the next thing to do would be to ream the guides out. Well, it's time to do some reaming. This happy little guy you see right here is referred to as a hand reamer. This one is 5/16. That's the size you want for the valves in most of these British bikes. Some of them use 3/8. And I do have reamers and what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, I do have reamers for the 3/8 ones as well, but like I said, this is a hand reamer. They call it a hand reamer for a reason. Don't be tempted to chuck that up in a drill and speed up your job a little bit. I mean, this is a little bit labor intensive and it can be a little hard on the wrist sometimes, but you get yourself a good quality T-handle like that. You put your reamer in there. And all we're going to do now is take some sort of a simple lubricant like a good old WD-40. That works for me. Lube up that, you put the reamer in the hole, and you start the process just like this. The reamer is going down into that valve guide. Don't turn it backwards. If you turn it backwards, you have a tendency to dull these things. As you can see, that's actually got quite a little bit of bronze on there now from cutting those guides. So I'm going to put a little more oil in and carry on until that reamer will go right through there. Like I say, there's a little bit of physical work here because you do have to apply a little bit of elbow grease to those reamers to get them to turn, and then when they get too stiff, then it's time to pull them out, clean them off, and start again. So I'm going to keep pulling this out. Alright, just about there. I went down quite a ways that time with it. So again, I'll wipe off the shavings from that, add a little more of that fluid to help it cut. I'm not going to bore you with this, so I'm just going to keep on reaming that out until the reamer goes all the way in like it should, and that should be the perfect size for that valve stem. So I'm going to just carry on, and I'll let you know what I've got when I'm finished. Okay, so I'm done with the reamer. Got it all cleaned off here. And if I can get it out of this chuck. All right, there we go. I'm going to put it back in its little case. I've had this reamer for, gosh, must be close to 30 years now, and it's still sharp enough to work. It's getting a little dull. Frankly, I do know how to sharpen these up, and I will probably sharpen this up before I put it away this time, but in any case, most people don't know how to do that, and if you don't know, if you've never worked around a tool and die shop or anything like that, then don't try sharpening it because you'll only mess it up. And anyway, when they start to get dull, the best thing to do is just replace them. Like if you took that somewhere to have it sharpened, it would cost you more than it would to just buy a new reamer. So anyway, buy top quality stuff when you can. Anything's better than nothing, though, having said that. Anyhow, the valves are a really nice fit there in those guides now. Like you could hear the little click where the valve was moving around before. You can't hear that anymore because you know, the clearance between the guide and the stem is what it should be now. You can just barely notice the slightest movement between the valve and the guide, so that's perfect. That's just what you want to see. No, I'm not going to get into cast iron guides. They can cause you problems. Cast iron guides tend to tighten up over time, so it's a good idea with the cast iron ones to set them a little bit loose to begin with. I've never had that problem with bronze guides, so anyway, as long as you've got nice clearance there and there's no drag on the valve when it's moving up and down, it should be just a nice free movement up and down there like that. You know, and just the slightest hint of a movement. And by the way, there's no lubricant in these valve guides at the moment, so the lubricant is going to take up a certain amount of clearance. But yeah, those are perfect. So the next thing to do is to check my seat and see if I need to cut them. I'd rather not cut them if I don't have to, but I'm going to check them with bluing and see if I'm getting a good clear seat on them. If I'm not, I have those new way cutters and I'll use those on it. Maybe I'll get them out just to show you how anyway, even if I don't have to. Okay. Well, the bluing is showing that I'm getting contact over probably, I'd say about 80% of that seat. So I'm really close there, but to save myself a lot of time with the lapping compound, I might as well use this equipment here. These are these new way valve cutters, and I do have the old seat grinders that came with that old Van Dorn valve grinding kit that I have over there, but this is so much easier that I don't even think about dragging that other thing up. All you do is slip that guide into the valve guide, and then you have three cutters here. One's 46 degrees. What's the other one? 31, and this one here is what's it say? 60. So the 46 degree, that's your most important one because that's the one that your valve face actually is going to actually seat against. The 60 and the, what is it, 30? 31 degree one. Those are to get you that nice 3-angle, you know, valve job on this, and that way you get a decent flow, and you can move the seat up and down on the valve so that you get the seat right in the middle, and the seat should be about a 1/16 of an inch wide. I mean, after a while, when things wear and that sort of thing, you're going to wind up with a full seat width on the valve anyway. That's just the way it goes, but especially on higher mileage engines. But anyway, when you start to put something together, you try to do the best you can. Anyway, I'm starting off with the 45. I might have to adjust it depending on whether it's the right size for that seat. No, that's perfect. I don't know what the last bike I did with that was. It might have been a Norton. Maybe that's why it's the right size. Anyhow, all you do is you slip that cutter on over the guides. You can see there's these little, I don't know if the camera will pick that up or not, but there's little sort of file-shaped cutters on here, and you can actually move them in and out depending on the size of the valve seat that you're cutting. But again, like the reamer, don't turn them backwards. You will dull the teeth in. And you can replace those cutters if you need to. All you do, put that on there like that. Just slip that tool over that like that. And turn this around. Not too much because it does cut fairly rapidly. And you pull it out. Grab your flashlight. And see if you've cut all the way around that seat. And I can see that I already have with this one. So I don't need to cut that 45 or that 46 degree angle side anymore. So I'll move over to the next valve. slide off there. There's a little mirror knob there that you put in there and a collet that holds it in place. So that goes in there like that. Again, the 46-degree one goes down. Give that a few turns. These are the intake valve seats, by the way. Now, let's see what we've got here. Yeah, that's cut nicely all the way around there. This one again, yeah, that's good. So now I'll move on to the exhaust valve seats. I won't keep you going with this because it'll just get kind of boring, but I'll show you when I go to use the other cutters what happens next. Okay, I've got a really nice face here. That was really very easy. Didn't have to cut too much on that at all. So now I want to just thin out my seat width just a bit. So now I'm going to use the 31-degree one on this side. Oh, now I got to adjust these ones because they're quite a bit too big for that. Maybe I'll work on the intake side. I'll check that first before I make an adjustment on those. Just try that. That might work. Check that. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Now, forward to the other take. And another couple of turns. Yeah, that's better. Just a little tiny bit. Dress this one a little bit more. Yeah, I like the way that's looking now. Okay, now since I'm working with this one, I might as well go for that 60-degree cutter. Just run that around on the inside here a little bit. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, this way I get the 3 angles here. But like I said before, the most important is that 46-degree angle because that's where your valve is doing the seat against. Good. Yeah, I like the way that looks. Okay, I'm just going to shut this off while I make an adjustment on this. What I have to do is slide these in here a little further. Well, I might as well show you how that works. It's really not a big deal. Loosen that up, push them in a little bit. Do that with all 5 of them. That way, when I go to do the exhaust valves seat, then it should go around without hitting the combustion chamber on the way around. So let's try that. Alright. That gonna work. Perfect. Okay. Let's back over this way. Do that 60-degree one on here again. A little more on this one. Perfect. Okay, that's it. Now it's time to lap the valves in. Now, this is valve lapping paste right here. And what you do, you don't need an awful lot of this. You just put a little tiny bit on the face of the valve like that. In just a few spots. And put the rest back in the can. Wipe your fingers off. I've lubricated the valve stem with motor oil. And I try to use these rubber suction cups on these whenever I can, but frankly, sometimes they just don't work. They'll come off all the time, and it's really annoying, but we'll see if I can get it to work this time. Sometimes it works well, and as you can see, sometimes it doesn't. So let's put it on, see if we can get her to stick a little better. No. Okay, what I'm going to do, because this is going to be an unpleasant SOB on me, so I'm going to get a piece of rubber hose, I'm going to stick it on the end of the valve stem there, and I'm going to lap the valve in that way. Again, you could put electric drill on there, but don't do that. It's way too much. Just lap them by hand. That's the way you should be doing it. Okay, as you can see, I got a piece of rubber gas line stuck on the end of that valve stem. That's how I'm going to lap them in. So I just pull up on it as I'm twisting that hose around. I've been doing this for a minute or so here now, so you can still hear the grinding paste grinding against that valve face and seat. So I'm going to take this off of here now, and I'm going to have a look. See what my valve looks like. Okay, I'm seeing a nice little gray area right in the middle of that valve face. That's exactly where I want it to be. So I'm going to set that valve aside because that valve has now been locked into that hole. That's where it belongs. So I'm going to have to mark that one just as soon as I'm done, so I don't forget. I'm going to wipe this off. Grab my flashlight here. See if I have a nice gray colored seat where that got lapped in. And the answer is yes. Now, to check that, make sure I'm going to have a really good seal, I'm going to take a little bit of this bluing, and here is something where people get too carried away. They use way too much bluing and you get a false reading. Is what happens from that. There are other ways of doing this. I prefer to use bluing, but you should just have enough bluing on there so that you can see. I might put a little tiny bit more than that, maybe. There. But you don't want, let me show you. You don't want a big gob like that on there because you're going to get a false reading from something like that, right? You want to just be able to just see that it's definitely blue, but it's not too thick. That's all you want. I don't know if the camera's focusing on that. I hope it is, but that's about how much you want on there. Not too much at all. Now you're going to put that back in there, press it against the seat, and give it about a quarter turn back and forth. No more than that. Just enough so that you know it's been rubbing against the seat. Okay, now we're going to pop it out again. We're going to examine the valve again, and I can see, yes, I see my contact there. So I know that's sealing. But the most important thing when you're doing this is to check that seat and make sure that you have blue all the way around. And I do. So this one's perfect. So I'm going to mark that valve. That's the right exhaust. So I'm going to put an R on the face of that so I know where it goes when I go to put the head together. Then I'm going to carry on with all the rest of the valves and do exactly the same thing I did with this one. Hey, I think this rubber stick or the rubber suction cup stick is actually going to work on these intake valves. Yeah, it is. So this is how you're supposed to do it with a suction cup. Like I say, every now and then, when you don't hear it making that scraping sound anymore, then you pull the valve away from the case and push it back down again, and that way we can get some fresh stuff on there and start cutting. And when you don't hear that gritty sound anymore, then it's time to have a look at it. So, have a look at that. Yeah, that's exactly where I want it to be. That seat is that groove is right, kind of right in the very middle of that valve face. So that's perfect. Now I'll check the seat. Okay, flashlight. Where'd you go? Yep, that seat looks really good. Quick check with some bluing. Again, don't put too much of this stuff on. It should just be enough that you can, if you got that much on there, that's way too much. So smear that around, get it off of there. You don't need it to be that thick. If it's that thick, you'll get a false reading. Alright, that's pretty thin. I can see the metal quite well showing through that, so stick that back in that bore. Again, give it about a quarter turn, and it's hard to do because there's nothing much to get a hold of there, but all you want is about a quarter turn, because if it's not right and you sweep that valve around the whole way, it will mark the whole seat whether it's right or not. So, yeah, anyway, that seat is looking perfect. Don't need to do anything else to that. I'll mark that valve, and by the way, if you're scared you're going to get your valves mixed up, and I've marked these obviously, but just take an old piece of cardboard, punch some holes in it, stick your valves through it, and that way they're less likely to get them mixed up. Okay, so the valves are all lapped in nicely now. The bluing checks perfect on the seats. I took a little bit longer to do the right hand intake. I don't know why. Sometimes you just got one that's a little bit stubborn, but like I say, this kind of job can occasionally be a little bit time consuming, but the thing is, when you're doing this kind of a job, you want to do it right. So, just take your time, keep on lapping away until you get it right. What else was I going to mention to you? Yes, was a trick an old vocational school teacher taught me one time. He said, if you're ever checking valve seats and you don't have any bluing, he said, what you can do is just take a pencil and make a series of little marks. I don't think the camera's going to pick that up, but just a series of little marks along the valve seat like that. About every quarter, 3/8 of an inch apart. Then you take your valve, which in this case would be this one. You set it in there, and you give it a twist around. And he said, if it wipes off the pencil mark all the way around on the seat, that then you have a perfect seat as well. Without doing bluing, you can just do it with a pencil. Let me just check that. Yeah, you know what? It's marked. Every one of those little marks has been swiped by that valve on the way by. So I know that's got a good seat just by doing that. And those little pencil marks are an awful lot thinner than bluing. So if that works, you got it right. Anyway, this has to go in the parts washer and get all scrubbed up now to get all the grit from the lapping compound off it before I put the valves back in the head and all, of course, the rockers and that sort of thing. But that's pretty much it. I will, other than that, it's just assembling it as you normally would with a good valve spring compressor. Don't forget to put your your valve seals on the intake valves when you're doing it. If you have that type of valve guide in there that takes the seal. If you don't, then don't worry about it. But, anyway, let's get her cleaned up and get her back together. Okay, there you go. Valves are back in the head. I managed to remember to put the seals on the intake valves. Anyway, this was a really straightforward job. I've got a pretty good valve spring compressor that works well with these sort of things. The only other thing I wanted to mention, as you see, I don't have the rocker arms back in here yet. But the only thing I wanted to mention was the rocker arm shafts. As you can see, they have a little flat area machined on one side of them. That flat area is supposed to go toward the inside of the head. In other words, facing in there like that, with the slots horizontal on the end of that rocker shaft. There, I think I focused on it. Yeah, anyway, that's so that oil can come from the banjo bolt out to the rocker arm shafts. And these things, like I think I mentioned before, they do receive full oil pressure on the head, which is something that you don't get with some bikes. Sometimes it's more of an afterthought, really, when you think about it. And these little plates that hold the rocker arms on, as you can see, there's a couple little tabs in there. Well, they fit in the end of that rocker shaft so the rocker shaft can't turn. So if you don't have the rocker shafts in there the right way in the first place, then this won't go on. And if you don't have that flat area on the side of that shaft facing inward, then oil can't get to that bushing there in the actual rocker arm. Anyway, that wraps up this little story of the cylinder head on this Norton. Anyways, hope you liked it. If you did, you could like, share, and subscribe. That would really help the channel a lot. So anyway, that's it for now. And I think the next thing to do is establish some end play on that crankshaft and start putting the crankcase back together. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.